How we doing today, everybody? This is Alex with Downey's Bonsai, and today I just want to talk to you real quick about this tree. I wasn't actually going to work on this tree today at all, but I just finished a Hinoki cypress video, and I went back out to put it on the patio, and I saw this tree sitting there with this nice new growth. And it really reminded me that I do want to make a video on this tree for you. So I had my camera set up. I figured I might as well just go ahead and make it now. So the reason I'm making this video is because there's a lot of beginner mistakes involved in this tree that I would love to share with you so that you don't have to make the same mistakes. To start off, the reason I got this tree is because it was right when I got into bonsai, probably end of March this year, and of course I was online looking at images, watching videos, and you keep seeing all these absolutely gorgeous Japanese maple trees, right? And they're all trimmed up, they look perfect, it's like they're ready for a show. They have the trunks are all white because they use the lime sulfur or whatever to turn them white. They have them perfectly trimmed, everything is nice and red. And of course you want one of those trees, but those trees take many, many years to grow. If you want to buy one, they're obviously tens of thousands of dollars. So what I did was I went online to all of these different bonsai stores online where you can buy these trees, and I started to look at the ones that had the best reviews, and then I decided to pick a straight trunk Japanese maple because it was a little bit cheaper. So the S shape I think was close to $200. This one was about $120, and I decided I would go with the straight trunk and see what I could do with it. And then I ordered it. It came in the mail. It came in, one of those super cheap, pots that, you can get for like $1 if you buy them wholesale. And, whatever, I didn't really think about that at the time, and I didn't think about the soil it was in, and that was one of my mistakes. Because if you're getting a tree from one of these bonsai websites, they're not coming from your state most likely. They're not coming from your exact climate most likely. So what you don't think about is how they might be using a different soil because maybe they have a drier climate, or maybe they have a wetter climate, so they use a better draining soil. And you don't really think about that when you're a beginner. You think you're buying a tree from a well-known nursery and it should be all ready to go. You should be able to just water it and trim it as you will. But that's not actually the case, and I found out the hard way. So I got this tree, put it on my patio. It was early spring, so all the leaves on the tree were actually from last year. They were all brown and dead, and there was a few buds popping out. So I let the tree start to grow. I didn't have to water it much. It really wasn't hot out yet. But as the tree grew, as the buds came out, the leaves would, they'd start to look like this. They looked nice, and then all of a sudden they would start to develop like brown tips, and some of them had brown spots, and the tree just did not look like it was very healthy. It kept growing, but it didn't look very healthy. Also, the tree was super straight. I think it was about maybe 24 inches tall. And they say it's anywhere from 3 to 5 years old. That's the kind of range they give you on the website. But just looking at the tree, it just looked very boring. It didn't look like a bonsai tree. It just looked like, maybe a tree you'd get at a nursery that was stuck in a bonsai pot. So, on top of that, I might as well mention it now. Also, super beginner mistake that's actually, in my mind, kind of led on by these bonsai websites is they send you a very young tree like this in a super tiny bonsai pot. And, the goal of everybody who buys these little trees is to grow it into a beautiful tree. You really can't do that in a little tiny bonsai pot. I mean, you could, but it's going to take many years. Whereas if you were to take this and put it in either a bigger bonsai pot like this, or if you were to take it and put it in a nursery pot, or even better, in the ground, it's going to develop much faster. But most people want to look at the tree. So, I think they should at least come in a little bit bigger of a pot. I know it maybe wouldn't match the tree, but most people buying those little trees are probably beginners, and they don't know that the roots need room to grow, otherwise the tree is not going to get much bigger, right? So that was another mistake I made, was just to buy the tree, leave it in the pot, because my goal is to turn this into a nice tree. So I should have immediately popped it out of that pot, being that it was spring, and put it into a big nursery pot, but I didn't. So again, we're all, when we start, in a rush to make a really beautiful tree, and it takes time. So anyways, in that pot, leaves kept developing what looked like root rot, and they also kind of looked like they had the brown spot disease. So I started treating the tree. They didn't seem to be helping. So then I took it home, brought it out of the pot, and found that the soil that they sent it in was basically like mud with sand in it. There was no akadama or, perlite or anything. It was literally like they took mud and sand and mixed it together and just put the pot, or the tree, in that pot. On top of that, it was a very inexpensive bonsai pot. One of the, like I said, one of these ones that you would get at, you buy like thousands of them on a wholesale order from China or Japan, and you get them for 50 cents to $1. I mean, the drain holes were super tiny. And the way you can see the bottom of the pot, it kind of had these areas where it would puddle the water instead of draining it towards the drains. And I actually put an azalea, which are super easy to grow, in that same pot, and it was super healthy, super green. Within 3 weeks on that azalea, most of the leaves, the tips started to turn brown. So I immediately took it out and put it in a different pot. So that, again, the pot was too small, the soil was not good for my climate. Maybe if you lived in a very, very dry, very hot area, that would be a great soil for you. But here in the state of Maine, it rains quite a bit, pretty humid in the summer. If we have to water it once or twice a day, that's fine, but it's pretty rare that we would have to do that. So that soil did not work for this area. But the tree was pretty far gone at that point. When I had first got it, I did make a cut because I wanted to bring the tree down. And I had wired this branch out to the side. Being spring, I didn't think that was a bad idea. That's when I wanted to do it, early spring, get that thing cut so that it could recover. And then when I decided to switch it into a bigger pot, I actually decided to dig down deeper so I could find the roots, and then I tipped the tree this way a little bit so that it actually has some movement to it. Sorry everybody, one of my kids came in. Anyways, where was I? So yeah, I mean, when I put it in this bigger pot, I dug down to the actual root base, and then I tipped the tree this way so that it would have a little bit of movement and kind of match that branch that I had bent. And then this branch was not even here at all. And there was a couple branches growing out down here at the time, but they weren't looking very healthy. And I got into this new soil, gave it some good nutrients. And one of the tricks that I did, I actually learned this from a guy that I got some trees from later on, was because it was already developing root rot, really kind of got to treat that somehow. So what I did, when I took this thing out of the old pot, I washed off all the dirt from the roots that I could. And then I got a big mixing bowl, and I put, it was about, I'd say about 3 to 4 tablespoons of hydrogen peroxide in the mixing bowl, filled the rest of it with water. It probably held about 3/4 of a gallon of water. And then I just set the tree in there for about 30 minutes. You can see the hydrogen peroxide doing its thing. You can see all the little bubbles on the roots and kind of floating up to the surface. And then I immediately put it in this pot and replanted it. And it was pretty amazing because within a matter of a couple weeks, the tree was growing leaves like this, absolutely perfectly healthy red leaves. And ever since, I put it in here with the better draining soil. These pots have amazing drains on the bottom. I don't know if you can see that on camera, but really good drainage. Definitely a much more coarse soil so it can drain better. And I did that little trick to get rid of any type of bacteria growing on the roots. This tree has just absolutely exploded with growth to the point where I actually got my first wire bite. I didn't realize how quickly this was going to grow because it wasn't growing very well. But once it did start to grow, it literally started to eat the wire. And then this one, I caught it early enough, but this branch, like I said, after I got in the pot, it's probably, a month after I got in the pot, this branch started to grow. It's only been here for maybe a month, and it's already this long. But I initially had wired it this direction, and it was growing so fast that it was already, there's no bite, but you can see a mark in the bark right there where the wire was. So I took the wire off, and it seems to be doing great. Next year, I'm probably going to transfer this into a nursery pot. I really want this to grow into a bigger tree. It's got plenty of room to grow in here. The roots really aren't that big, but I really want the roots to go down and really, fill this tree out the best that it can. So, but for now, I just want to do a real quick, I'm trying to get this branch to develop. You can already see the little branch growing out the side of it. I don't want it to come up this high, so I'm just going to go ahead. I always leave. It's one thing I've learned, again, being a beginner, you learn a lot of things from mistakes, is that if you were to cut this right here where these two little nodes are, this branch is going to die back, and most likely this little node area is going to die. I don't know if I have one on here to show you. Yeah, I can't, this one you can't see anymore, but it has died back. It used to stick out about this much, but it's died back, and just as I brush the tree, it's kind of falling off. But yeah, so I'm going to come here. I'm going to leave about an inch, so I'm not really worried about how the tree looks just yet. This is all just kind of a rough shaping still. Clip that off. You can already, I don't know if you can see it on the camera. I'm going to zoom this in while I do this. Alright. I don't know if you can see it right there, but there's already a little branch growing out the side with a little tiny leaf on it. So we're going to leave that there. We do have probably another month or so of good growth here in the state of Maine before it gets too cold and it starts to go into its dormancy. So one thing I'm going to do is just take off these lower, older leaves. Those can come off. We have some really nice buds coming out here, new branches. I kind of want them to have more light, so I'm going to take off the leaves that are down close to them. I want them to get as much light as they can. And take these little old twigs off that have died back. Same thing down here, there's some buds coming out of this branch, but they're being shadowed by all these leaves. So those are coming off. And I'm going to take this one off. It's not looking that good. That's it, everybody. That's all I'm going to do to this thing. So I think eventually this will develop into a really nice tree. Again, I'm glad I was able to get down to the roots and kind of move it, lay it over like this so I can get some movement out of it. And I'm really glad that this branch started to grow down low so I can get that moving over that way. And now I'm just going to keep trimming it away. Like I said, I got a lot of nice branches coming out. Now that I trimmed this off, and it's doing what it's supposed to do. It's budding back. These other branches are starting to grow out with the new buds. And like I said, I got about another month of growth here. And then it's going to get too cold, and these leaves are going to start to change colors and then die and fall off. And then we'll just kind of have to put it up for the winter, and we'll see how it grows next year. But really glad I figured out the situation, because losing $120 on a small tree is not fun. So I hope that helps you. I hope someone can use that trick. I actually learned that from a guy who has like a pre-bonsai nursery. They sell a lot of very, very expensive, root treatments online, but that worked extremely well. This tree came back to health so fast after I did that. So, if I have another sick tree that is on its way out, I'm definitely going to try that trick again, because it worked very well. So I would take it easy on the hydrogen peroxide. Don't put it directly into hydrogen peroxide, but dilute it quite a bit. But it actually worked quite well. And definitely to get rid of all that muddy soil. If you have really muddy soil around your roots causing root rots, just get it out of there. You're going to have to work the new soil into the old roots a lot more, but it's better to get rid of that soil that's killing the roots and get some good soil that's going to work for your area. And I can't even tell you what I use, because if you live somewhere else and you try to use my soil mix, you could very easily kill the tree. Maybe it drains too easy, and you live in a hot climate, and your tree would just dry out and die. So you kind of have to adjust. It's one of those things you're gonna have to learn with experience what works in your area, and that may change over time. You know, as things get warmer, or you know, you have a year like this year for us where we had a ton of rain. Those kind of things can really affect, you know, how the soil works with your tree. So thank you for watching the video. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Have a good day, everybody.